Hello everyone, and welcome to this new edition of the Rendez-vous AgriUrbains webinar series. These seminars are made possible thanks to the support of the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Food of Quebec, the MAPAQ, and the Ministry of Employment and Social Solidarity. Today's session is presented in collaboration with URBAgr'inn Days as part of our shared efforts to highlight inspiring urban agriculture initiatives and emerging perspectives from around the world. I'm pleased to welcome Maëlys Leblanc, Research Assistant in Urban Agriculture, who helped organize this special session. Alongside our speakers today, Dr. Anna Kirstgen and Dr. Björn Moller from Fraunhofer ISI. Sorry for the pronunciation. I'm not sure I have it, but their presentation will explore how Foresight approaches can help cities imagine more sustainable, resilient, and livable food systems through urban agriculture. Drawing on the European project Food City Boost, they will present future trends, scenarios, and innovation pathways shaping the future of urban food systems. So before we begin, I'd like to mention that today's webinar is being recorded and will be made available on OLAB's YouTube channel by next week. A Q&A session will take place at the end of the presentation, but please feel free to post your questions in the chat directly throughout the session so we can come back to them later. And finally, at the end of the webinar, there's a short satisfaction survey that will appear on your screen. It only takes a few seconds to complete, and your feedback is very helpful to us. And I think I will now hand it over to Maëlys, and we can launch officially. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jade. Hello, everyone. So my name is Maëlys Leblanc. I'm a research assistant in urban agriculture. I'm really happy to be here today with the goal of extending the URBAgr'inn Days conference, which takes place last year in Belgium, on the topic of innovation in urban agriculture through a diversity of topics and stakeholders. This conference, so the URBAgr'inn Days conference, helps also to develop an international network around urban agriculture. And our aim is to create spaces for dialogue, to share ongoing work, initiatives, and research on urban agriculture topics. So we organized this webinar with the aim of sharing best practices, research results, and international examples. So for this webinar, thank you all for joining us, and I'm pleased to give the floor to Anna and Björn to share their work inside the Food City Boost project. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Maëlys. Björn, would you share our slides, please?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So hello, everybody, also from our side, and thank you for having us and for giving us a space to present the work that we are actually doing at the moment within the Food City Boost project. I'd also like to highlight that Maëlys and her colleagues are also part of this project, so she probably knows the work that we have been doing. Hopefully for the rest of you, there will be some interesting insights. So yeah, today's topic of our little presentation is city-made, and we would like to introduce you to our Foresight approach to urban agriculture that we've been doing in the Food City Boost project. Before we jump in, I'd just like to let you know a bit, just a tiny bit, no worries, about our institution and what we're doing there. So we are part of our institute is part of the Fraunhofer Society. Fraunhofer is one of the 4 major non-university research organizations in Germany, and the only one that is dedicated to applied science. And as such, we are also Europe's largest applied science research institution. So you might think about Fraunhofer as really being into technology development and all of that, and that's exactly right. But our institute, the ISI, the Institute for System and Innovation Research has a little bit of a special role in there. So we are sort of the think tank for the society, and as such have a slightly different approach. The Institute has been founded in 1972, so we are doing that for quite some time now, research, systems and innovation research, and we are based in southern Germany, in Karlsruhe, and also in Leipzig, and we have offices in Heilbronn and Berlin as well. Just an overview about the departments, just to give you a better idea of what we're working on. So there is, for example, a department that works with policy and societal innovations. We have energy and energy policy and energy markets as a topic, but also sustainability or emerging technologies or innovation and knowledge economy. And one of them is of course, the Department of Foresight. Yeah. And as such, we are within that think tank also, again, a little bit of a special department because we are foremost working on the methodology. So we are researching on the Foresight methodology and how to apply that best in order to help our customers that are from policy or industry, but of course also civil society. So the work that we do really aligns with the Foresight cycle you see on the left hand on the screen. So we are having a look into trends that are out there in the beginning, just to open the field, doing horizon scanning, old ways, new ways, AI-based, and try to dig in trends and weak signals that are out there that will be of potential interest for our clients within the next future. Futures can range from 5 to 15 years and even beyond. We will then dig in and prioritize and find out what are trends that are more relevant for our customers, what they have to be prepared for. And then within the next stage, we try to imagine change. So we start developing strategies, how to be resilient and prepared, and how to actually anticipate a desirable future that we want to. And then the last quarter, we try to find ways together with our clients how to implement those ideas into action. We use a quite broad set of methodologies. So you see, I mentioned already a couple of them, but horizon scanning is part of our work as much as future surveys in terms of Delphi scenarios or expert interviews. We're doing scenarios, road mapping, and also, of course, visioning processes. So that said, now let's just dive into the work that we are doing in Food City Boost, just to give you a little bit of an idea what the Food City Boost project is about. It is a 4-year-long project funded by the EU, and we are trying to find ways to cultivate urban agriculture in cities. And one of those ideas is to, of course, foster sustainable production of food within cities, and also connecting urban, peri-urban, and rural areas in order to make the most out of it. We do that through the development of tools or indicators. We have a team that is working on policy recommendations. There has been an innovation catalog developed to give you better ideas on what are innovations that could be implemented in your urban agriculture, however that is shaped or formed. And of course, Foresight is also a work package within that project in order to be prepared for the desirable future ahead of us that we would like to anticipate. The Foresight within the Food City Boost work package really is based on 4 little work packages or steps, task, I think we call them. And the overall idea is to find out what is out there, what has to be taken into consideration in order to build the most desirable future within urban agriculture. Of course, stakeholders play a pivotal role. So we also did a stakeholder analysis on who are the people that are relevant to the topic today, but will also be in the future, in order to take everybody into account and make it a participatory process, because in 30 years there will be different people relevant or different type of people relevant and people relevant than there is today. And based upon those tasks, we developed transformative narratives, as we call them. So there are scenarios based on the trends. And this is actually, to be fair, the point in the project where we are at the moment. And this is also what we will show you today. And the next step will be that we will actually take those scenarios into our living labs, where we then, in the participatory approach, see on the ground what are changes that should be made and what are things that have to be taken into consideration in order to actually make urban agriculture thriving in their various cities. Yeah.
Then I would take over and tell you a little bit about what we did in our first task, in the task of trend analysis. There we started with a horizon scanning because we wanted to analyze what is shaping urban agriculture in the future. The aim was not only to see the trends in urban agriculture, so technologies itself, but also all signals, all topics that could have an impact in the next 10 to 15 years on the broad field of urban agriculture. The process itself was semi-automated, so we combined digital tools with expert assessment. On the one hand, we used automated methods like AI text modeling to process larger sets of sources and identify recurring terms or topics or signals. And on the other hand, the interpretation of all these outcomes was not automated. These results had to be checked and discussed and assessed by experts within and the project, and also with external experts. We looked at different sources, scientific literature and Foresight reports, of course, but also on news sites and broader trend materials. So the aim of this horizon scanning was to identify weak signals and emerging developments that are relevant or that could become relevant to urban agriculture. The scanning areas were quite diverse. Obviously, we had a look to urban planning and agriculture, but also to other sectors like engineering, policy, social science, economy. You see here some named. First result we got was these kind of word clouds. That was an intermediate step in this process, and they helped us to see which topics appeared frequently and where thematic clusters were emerging. And of course, then the participatory sense mating had to come in place to see what are really the trends and topics that are relevant and that are worth to have a closer look to. So the result of this horizon scanning phase was a structured trend radar that you can see here with more than 100 trends or topics that we organized across different dimensions along this deep categorization that you see on the bottom left side. So in red, you see social topics that could impact urban agriculture, and in the other colors, you see technical, economical, environmental, and political topics or trends. So this trend radar gives an overview of what is currently emerging, and it helps us to identify which trends could be important for urban food systems. We published these trend radar and with short description of every trend in a brochure that is available for download on our website. And this brochure sits here in the intersection between urban planning, agri-food, and sustainability. But of course, these trends are only small topics or small signals, and not all of them will grow in the future. Some are only a topic of the moment, and some will increase. And then we had a deeper look how some of these trends could emphasize each other and make a bigger topic, and that's what we call deep dives. And some of these deep dives, Anna will explain you a little bit more now.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, just to give you an idea what a deep dive could look like, Björn already highlighted that it's not just technology driven or not just technologically driven topics within the trends that are relevant, and that is why we brought you like just 5 deep dives that we thought might be of interest, just to give you a better idea of how widely spread those are. And the first I'd like to highlight is the concept of third places. It is an idea that is from the field of urban planning, and it really highlights the idea of spaces in the city that we neither use for work or for living. And as cities are, we are talking about the age of urbanization. There's many people that are actually moving into the cities. A lot of jobs are there. Rents are getting more and more expensive, and it becomes crucial to think about where people actually spend their free time and how those places should be actually designed in order to give the possibility to boost well-being and create like livable spaces that are not just there if you'd like to consume or have a coffee, but also just go out and be at a place with a certain quality. The next trend is the technical one, of course, but it is about cobots. I mean, a lot of you already know about the concept of cobots, of course, and about exoskeletons and how that potentially might shape our future work. So several ideas within that. It is a chance to actually easing physically demanding work, or also replace lacking workforce, but it's also about optimizing the use of resources, for example. So it is a way to think about how you can how you can distribute water and a fertilizer, for example, more efficiently than with the old school way. Another trend that we have brought to you today is, of course, a limited space of an expensive rents. And this is also, of course, well known. But the question is, it will have an influence on urban agriculture, because we have a competition of land use within city with rising rents, and the idea where urban agriculture can find its place, and within that whole the wide range of interests, if you want to call it like that. So it has an influence and definitely consequences, but it also might shape urban agriculture in different ways, for example, on rooftops or especially in vertical farming. So definitely something to also take into consideration. And the next trend we selected for today is the idea of the 15-minute city. Again, a trend from urban planning. It is the idea that everything for your everyday life, like a grocery store, a kindergarten, healthcare, leisure shopping, is in the walking or biking distance of 15 minutes. And the question that arises from that is, how will that shape the appearance of our cities, and what does it mean? So definitely it emphasizes that cities get again more localized. So it is more, city will in the future take more place on a neighborhood level. And this also brings implication for the way that we grow our food, where we buy our food, and also something that might potentially influence urban agriculture. And last but not least, another one from that field is the idea of water allocation priorities. For example, in Southern Europe, we have had issues with that, especially through really hot summers and droughts in Spain, for example, last year. So the question arises, if we are short on water, how are we distributing that? How are we thinking about ways? Where should it go first? How are we prioritizing the use of our water? And this is something where already, especially, for example, the city of Barcelona has started drafting a water management plan to make the use of their water more efficient. But it also has implications on how the cities are designed, for example, with green areas, with the concept of sponge cities, and can agriculture also play a role in that when we think about the crops and also the plants that we are planting in parks, and how can this all summing up to actually make an effort to keep the water and not just lose it because, yeah, it hasn't been thought about enough. So this is a bigger overview about the deep dives that we have done within the project, which you, amongst others, will also find in the brochure that Björn just showed you a little bit earlier. And now we go to the next step of the Food City Boost project, the scenarios. And I'll again hand over to you, Björn.
Yeah, thanks. So the next task that we did then was we developed scenarios because, of course, these trends are interacting with each other, and some of these trends are emphasizing each other, some are contradicting each other. So the question is, how will the future look like in which urban agriculture could take place? And since it's hard or impossible to predict how the future will look like, the scenario method is a well-established foresight tool that you don't draw just one picture of the future, but several that are quite extreme. And of course, the truth will be somewhere in the middle, but it's a useful tool to have these extremes to work with and to be prepared and discuss a little bit how the extremes could look like. We did this in the Food City Boost project to create this space of possibilities with 4 scenarios, and the living labs of the project could then locate their shared wisdom in this future space and think in alternatives and see how the environment in which agriculture take place in 10 to 15 years look like. Since this foresight method, that's the core of our research, so we are the experts for the methods, I will show you a little bit about the scenario method in detail, and then of course the results that came out of this process. So that's the living labs that could locate themselves here in this space. So why are future scenarios a useful tool in a foresight approach? Of course, it's expanding the field of perception and it's combining different areas of expertise. But a very often underestimated advantage is just to clearly articulate different expectations and document them in a formal way. Because if you talk with people, and especially with scientists or experts in a field, they have a quite clear opinion or vision of how their field will look like in 10 to 15 years. However, when you bring 10 experts of the same area to a table then and makes them articulate their different expectation, it quickly comes clear that maybe the expectations are not really the same, and then the scenario method is a very nice tool to systematically guide the discussion and have a common understanding of the different expectations. Of course, the trends or the topics that are discussed are interacting with each other, and in the scenario method, these interactions are systematically considered, and then at the end, alternative pathways are developed to illustrate how the future could look like. The core steps are these 6 steps that you see here. So first, the big question, how urban agriculture or the environment in which urban agriculture takes place. This big question is brought down in many small questions. And all these small questions for different smaller topics are discussed and answered in alternatives, how they could look like in 10 to 15 years. And then in the scenario process, you look what fits together. So which future assumption makes sense to appear in a world with another future assumption. And then you combine them to consistent scenarios and can use these scenarios, of course, for any kind of strategy development or innovation pathways that you derive from these scenarios. A picture that is often used in the scenario method is this funnel where you have the present on the left side and the future on the right. And the first step is to ask, what is the current situation? Not for urban agriculture at all, but for a lot of smaller subtopics that you define as a first step. And what are these key factors? So what are the small topics that you have to take into consideration when you develop these future scenarios? And then for all these topics, you discuss what are plausible future developments, how could this single topics evolve over time. So you get different alternative developments for each individual factor, and then you combine these alternatives to scenarios. In the Food City Boost project, we had 20 key factors. And at this step of the process, it's important to understand what is the key factor, because there is the term of assumptions coming soon, and it's important to distinguish between these two. So a key factor is a thematic area with a high relevance for future developments in the system. It's normally not a trend itself, but rather it defines a field where change can occur. So here you see the 20 topics that we called key factors that we had a look to in the Food City Boost project. However, these 20 key factors are not all of the same importance. Some of these factors are clearly drivers that are more shaping how the future will look like others. And it makes sense in a scenario process to first discuss the big drivers. So that's the topics that are really shaping the system, and to figure out which factors these are. We did an impact assessment, so we had all these factors on the left side, on the top as well, and asked the question, how big is the impact of this topic on all of the other topics? And then you make the sum at the end, and these 5 that you can see here with the orange arrows, that's obviously the most relevant factors that are really having the biggest impact on the other topics and that are really driving change. So then it's worth to start discussing how these topics will look like in 10 to 15 years. This question, how it will look like in the future, we did in a workshop in the Food City Boost project. You can see here, where we discussed with all the consortium partners the future assumption for all these factors. So a future assumption is described as a distinct, plausible way in which a specific factor might evolve over time. Each of these assumptions must be consistent and exclusive from the others, and it should be plausible, but not necessarily probable. So we are not discussing what people think is most probable, but we want to widen the perspective as much as we can. So we take all plausible future assumptions into consideration. So for example, for this factor here that was called personal sufficiency and everyday autonomy, we had 3 future assumptions. The first one was citizens increasingly cultivate their own food on balconies and in community gardens. Another alternative future assumption was that government policies promote sufficiency and embed it into urban education systems. And a third assumption was for this factor that only a small subculture actively pursues self-sufficiency while the majority continues to rely on centralized food systems. And this exercise we did for all the 20 factors. So we get a whole set of future assumptions that then we wanted to combine to future scenarios and see what makes sense, which of these future assumptions could occur together in a plausible world. And to do this, we had a consistency analysis. Now you see not only the factors, but also their future assumption in this matrix. And we discussed which 2 future assumptions could occur together on a scale from 1 to 5. And afterwards, we use a software to get the pathways, and it will look like this. It will calculate the pathways that are most plausible occurring together. So you see here one possible way is if you combine all the yellow future assumption. This is one scenario that is consistent. There is no constraints that there are assumptions that are probably not occurring together. And then you have one green, one red, one orange pathways that are alternative scenarios where you see they are taking completely different future assumptions into considerations. of course, then there is again a sense-making step following to see if it makes sense, and the scenarios will be described then a little bit more in detail. And as a final result of this task, then we had 4 scenarios that you can see here. The scenario A, sustainable scenography. In this scenario, agriculture is visible in the city, but it does not really change the food system. We see here school gardens, green rooftops, or public demonstration sites. They're useful for education and awareness, but most food still comes from conventional agriculture and centralized supply chains. In the second, the green scenario, green autonomy. Here, agriculture becomes really part of everyday city life. People grow food in community gardens and in shared urban spaces. Local networks, neighborhoods, markets, public support make cities greener and more self-sufficient. But at the same time, this attractive urban lifestyle can increase costs and create maybe new social inequalities. The third scenario that we derived from the task is patchwork production. Here, many local initiatives emerge, but they are not well connected. Some neighborhoods have active gardens, food sharing, and small local markets, while others have very little access to these opportunities. And urban agriculture, it all grows from bottom up, but without any clear coordination or strong political support. And the orange scenario, high-tech circular city, is of course driven by technology. Food production and distribution here are highly efficient, with artificial intelligence, automation, vertical farms, alternative proteins playing a major role. The city becomes more circular and resource efficient, but the food system is also more depending here on large tech companies and less shaped by neighborhoods and the citizens themselves. So these 4 scenarios are the outcome of our scenario task. However, they are, of course, only the starting point of a strategic process where you want to make use of them. We will use them in the Food City Boost project in the next tasks, but we published them already in a brochure and provide you one aspect of how you could directly make use of them. And Anna will say a little bit more about that.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Because it's always a bit of a shame when we are working with only 6 or 7 living labs. I mean, it's great to work with them, but it's also nice to know that the results of the work can be spread more widely. And that's why we decided to come up with a little, let's call it game or questionnaire. We call it the Urban Food Futures Navigator. And we invite everybody who's interested to use it. It is the idea to just really find out about your own status quo throughout the questionnaire and find out where you are standing at the moment in those scenarios. And then we have some little suggestions what you could do to actually be a bit more prepared and thrive towards the scenario that you are aiming for. So it is in a brochure. It's not online yet. We will say a little bit about that later, but it will be soon. And we invite you to try it out and let us know what you think about the Urban Food Futures Navigator. We always also have it as a printout on paper, so you can technically also take it in your urban garden community and try it there. We just thought it was a fun approach to do so. But that said, let's just go to the next slide so that we might have a little bit more time for questions. That is our take-home messages for the moment. So as I said earlier, the project has not been completed yet, but for now we could really say that urban agriculture, as we have discussed earlier, is not just an isolated topic, but it is really a broad field with many opportunities, but also a lot of other influences that are playing a pivotal part in the urban transformation. As such, on the other hand, urban agriculture can play a really significant role within that. And as Björn highlighted, there is not one single future, so it is also worth having to have a look at alternatives to see in what way your city or your municipality is actually developing, and whether you like it or not, and what you could do about it to actually thrive the way. So, and as we see in cities today within the project and also beyond, cities are having hybrid reality. So you will not find a city where a scenario is represented to 100%. So you can also find contrary developments within one city, but it will be interesting to see in which way it will then further go, and also how different solutions can be integrated toward the goal of making cities more sustainable and to help with that transformation. And yeah, last but not least, maybe the key challenge actually is that we have all those ideas and inspirations, but we really have to get them into action. And in order to do that, and to do that the most targeted possible, it is first really helpful to have a desirable future and a clear communication about that within the group, what a desirable future actually is, and then to together develop strategy and actions to go ahead and reach those goals. Last slide. Yeah, and those are the two brochures. And just in case you might wonder, as we are from a scientific institute, we are actually really into doing those brochures, because we believe that scientific articles, no doubt, they are great, but we think it's also really helpful to have the knowledge that has been produced within Food City Boost in a really hands-on approach, so that everybody can have a look at it and just, yeah, maybe get some inspiration out of it and use it on various levels, but not just within the scientific community. Yeah. And yeah, those are the partners within the project that we are actually working together with since 3 years now, and 1 more year to go, or 1.5 more years to go. And we are really happy within that project. And maybe in 1.5 years, we see each other again, and the results once the project had hopefully successfully been ended. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you, Anna and Björn, for this insightful presentation and for sharing the work and perspectives around the Food City Boost today. Of course, if you'd like to stay informed about our upcoming webinars, you can join the Rendez-vous AgriUrbains mailing list through our website, or follow us on social media and subscribe to our